Exhaustion weighs on you like an anchor. Perhaps you can't pinpoint its exact source, but the burden is unmistakable. You carry an unseen load, as though maintaining universal harmony falls squarely on your shoulders. Constantly pleasing others, dodging confrontation, maintaining perpetual kindness and understanding, this has become your default mode. From an early age, you absorbed the lesson that virtue leads to victory, that kindness begets kindness, and that fairness and honesty naturally earn recognition. But consider this uncomfortable truth. These beliefs form a comforting illusion designed to maintain your compliance and predictability. How frequently have you bitten your tongue to preserve tranquility? How often have you diminished yourself to spare others disappointment? How many times have you endured disrespect and exploitation while maintaining your smile, claiming everything was fine, while swallowing your tears, fury, and wounded pride in service of a supposed moral high ground that only rendered you invisible? Pay attention. Society doesn't reward the agreeable. It rewards the strategic. Your presence here suggests you've experienced this harsh reality firsthand. You've grown weary of playing the accommodating role, the understanding companion, the perpetual yes person. You're beginning to recognize that the more desperately you seek acceptance, the less respect you command. The more you yield, the greater others' demands become. The more you sacrifice, the less your contributions are valued. This brings us to Machiavelli's teachings. Machiavelli wasn't the villain history often portrays. He was perhaps the first to articulate the unvarnished truth about power dynamics. He grasped something most refused to acknowledge, that idealistic morality divorced from reality becomes a snare, that appearing virtuous differs vastly from being effective, just, or worthy of respect. This discussion will address, without sugarcoating or pretense, why you must abandon your quest to be universally liked. This doesn't require becoming heartless or calculating. Instead, it means awakening from the naive fantasy that fairness governs the world and that virtue alone guarantees reward. We'll confront uncomfortable truths. As long as your primary goal remains universal approval, you remain captive to others' whims, imprisoned by your own excessive kindness. If you've grown tired of being exploited, overlooked, and discarded, perhaps it's time for transformation, time to learn what Machiavelli understood about seizing control of your existence. Do you still believe society treasures genuinely good people? Examine your surroundings carefully. Who commands genuine admiration? Who occupies positions of authority? Who earns respect, wields influence, and claims their space? Are these individuals the most generous, compassionate, or just? Or are they the most calculated, assertive, and difficult to manipulate? The reality stings. Utility, not kindness, governs human interactions. Machiavelli recognized this truth centuries ago. The Prince wasn't written as a guide to malevolence. It revealed how power games actually operate. One of his most bitter insights remains this: goodness alone proves insufficient. Often, goodness becomes the fastest route to irrelevance. You might dedicate your life to loyalty, compassion, and understanding. You could offer your finest efforts, assist others without expectation of return. Yet the moment your usefulness expires, you'll be forgotten, replaced, silenced, and worse, without any guilt from those who benefited from you. Society doesn't measure your value through moral character. It evaluates what you deliver, the influence you possess, the impact you create. Notice how agreeable people constantly chase after others, perpetually justifying themselves, explaining their actions, attempting to prove their worthiness. Meanwhile, those who establish boundaries, who refuse unreasonable requests, who present themselves with clarity, they earn respect. They possess voices. They claim their space. Why? Because unconditional kindness appears as weakness. Those who never confront, never pose threats. And non-threatening individuals aren't taken seriously. They're viewed as resources rather than people, tools rather than individuals. You can exhaust yourself pursuing others' approval, but without representing power or consequences, people won't hesitate to exploit you. It's harsh, certainly, but it reflects reality. Machiavelli observed that leaders shouldn't seek to be loved if forced to choose between love and fear. What did he mean? Genuine respect emerges from others' perception that you possess the power to act, that you cannot be trampled without consequences, that you're not merely a replaceable component in someone else's strategy. This principle applies to your life as well. If you continue existing solely to please others, you'll continue being perceived as easily disposable, not because you lack worth, but because the world doesn't reward those who fade into the background. Understanding the origins of this compulsive need for acceptance reveals something deeper, something that may have undermined you for years. Behind your excessive agreeableness lies a psychological foundation that requires examination. You weren't born craving universal approval. This behavior was taught, conditioned into you. From childhood, you learned that acceptance came with a price, sacrificing pieces of yourself. Forced smiles, suppressed desires, silenced opinions, all in service of gaining approval. From "don't do that, it's ugly," to "be nice," to "don't talk back," to "you're so polite," gradually, you molded yourself to match others' expectations. What nobody explained was that constant people-pleasing creates an emotional trap, a psychological prison constructed from poisonous compliments and punishments disguised as education. You learned that pleasing others earned love, while displaying anger, setting boundaries, or acting selfishly resulted in rejection. So you adapted, as any mind would, to survive. The problem? This adaptation transformed into submission. Today, you can't refuse requests without experiencing guilt. You feel responsible for others' well-being even when it destroys you internally. You experience frustration but keep it hidden. You face disappointment but forgive too quickly. You exhaust yourself maintaining an image others expect, not because it represents your authentic self, but because it's what you learned provided security. Here's the reality check. This isn't kindness. This is fear. Fear of rejection, of not being loved, of being perceived as bad, of being authentically yourself, with desires, anger, boundaries, and a voice. This fear has transformed you into someone who sabotages themselves, someone who hides behind socially acceptable but emotionally destructive behavior. The most tragic aspect? You don't even realize you're doing this. You call it empathy, but it's fear of confrontation. You label it understanding, but it's fear of abandonment. You term it kindness, but it's fear of inadequacy. Your kindness has become a mask, an unconscious strategy to avoid the pain of rejection. But this mask carries a steep price. It suffocates your authenticity, your power, and your dignity. If you don't remove this mask, it will fuse with your identity. Eventually, you'll look in the mirror and no longer recognize your true self. If you're attempting to live as a universally good person, hoping others will recognize your morality, ethics, and integrity, stop immediately. Machiavelli warned over 5 centuries ago that this path, while beautiful, proves dangerous. In reality, the effective win, not the good. Effectiveness in life's game requires strategy. It demands understanding that people don't act based on your goodness. They're driven by interest, fear, and power. In The Prince, Machiavelli writes, "Everyone sees what you appear to be, but few feel what you really are." This statement exposes the illusion that being genuine, pure, and authentic suffices to earn respect. The harsh reality: people don't perceive your intentions. They react to your appearance, your image, your impact. You might be the most just person alive, but if you seem weak, you'll be treated as such. You might possess the most generous heart, but without inspiring respect, you'll be ignored. Therefore, the prince, and here, the prince represents anyone seeking control of their life, cannot afford naivety. They must appear virtuous when convenient and act strategically when necessary. Machiavelli states, the prince must know how to use the nature of the animal well. You must be a fox to recognize traps and a lion to terrify wolves. This metaphor rings brutally true. The fox embodies cunning, perceiving hidden dangers, moving silently. The lion commands fear, strength, presence. Machiavelli doesn't advocate being solely one or the other. He suggests being both, wise enough to recognize manipulation and strong enough to make others reconsider before attempting to exploit you. Want respect? Understand that Machiavelli's recommended virtue isn't what moralists preach. It's virtue, a combination of courage, intelligence, audacity, and self-control. It means acting with necessary coldness, recognizing that sometimes appearing harsh becomes the only method to maintain order, not from malice, but from wisdom. Another quote, "A man who wishes to act in all circumstances like a good man is doomed to ruin among so many who are not good." You recognize this truth. You've been that person, attempting goodness in every situation. What did you gain? Abuse, silence, injustice. People don't play fair, and if you continue as though they do, you'll always lose. This doesn't mean abandoning your values. It means ceasing to use them as shackles. It means beginning to act with power, considering how others perceive and exploit your goodness. Machiavelli wasn't cynical, he was realistic. He observed humanity without romanticism or veils, writing The Prince as a survival manual for a world where appearance equals power and weakness disguised as virtue constitutes a death sentence. A fatal confusion destroys many lives, the belief that goodness requires submission. That being a good person necessitates accepting everything silently, forgiving without question, and swallowing what bothers you to maintain peace. This isn't kindness, it's naivety. It's cowardice masquerading as virtue. Without understanding this distinction, you'll remain the world's emotional doormat. Authentic kindness doesn't require self-nullification. It demands awareness, clarity, choice. Being good doesn't mean being a perpetually cheerful fool who's always available, always smiling, always sacrificing for those who wouldn't lift a finger for you. This constitutes self-abandonment, emotional dependency disguised as morality. Naivety believes people will treat you with the same heart you possess. Naivety assumes the world is fair and that integrity will be recognized. Naivety expects gratitude, reciprocity, consideration. It lives frustrated and disappointed because it projects onto others a nobility that doesn't exist. True kindness differs. It's firm. It knows how to refuse. It understands when to walk away. It recognizes that not everyone deserves your best, and that giving your best to those offering nothing in return constitutes waste, not generosity. You can be just, compassionate, and integral while still being feared, respected, someone who commands presence, who knows what they will and won't tolerate. Machiavelli, despite seeming cruel to modern sensibilities, didn't hate virtue, he hated naivety. He understood that in a world full of predators, kindness without strength becomes merely fresh meat in the jungle. Ask yourself, is your kindness protecting or exposing you? Is it strengthening or destroying you? Because if your concept of goodness involves swallowing injustices, accepting crumbs, and blaming yourself for feeling anger, then you're not being good, you're being dominated. Many people awakening to their own submission make a dangerous mistake, believing they must become cold, insensitive, almost cruel to stop being nice. This represents the infamous rebound effect. After years of exploitation, you think the only escape involves becoming the opposite, someone tough, indifferent, calculating. But this is another trap. When you abandon your essence, you're not strengthening yourself, you're protecting yourself through denial. That's not freedom, it's trauma disguised as power. True liberation occurs when you learn to be complete, when you stop acting for others and start acting for yourself. It's not about being good or bad, it's about being real. About looking in the mirror knowing you can be kind but will never again be passive, compassionate but never permissive, helpful but never begging for recognition. How do you stop being excessively nice without betraying who you are? First, understand that your voice matters. You've been conditioned to think that complaining, setting boundaries, or disagreeing is selfish. But that's false. Selfishness is expecting you to live silently while others speak over you. Speaking up, taking stands, saying, "I don't accept this," that's dignity, self-respect. Second, practice refusing requests. Saying no represents one of the most liberating acts possible, and it doesn't require aggression or shouting. A calm, firm, non-negotiable no carries more power than 1,000 justifications because it communicates the essential: you have limits. Those with limits earn respect, those without get exploited. Third, observe who's bothered by your transformation. These people serve as your thermometer. If you start asserting yourself and someone claims you're different, strange, or selfish, it's because your submission was useful to them. Your change breaks the invisible pact that allowed them to use you, making them uncomfortable. Don't be fooled, this signals progress. Fourth, stop trying to be understood by everyone. Not everyone will comprehend your transformation, and that's acceptable. You don't owe loyalty to their image of you. Your loyalty belongs to your truth, your peace, your emotional health. Fifth, replace the desire for acceptance with a commitment to authenticity. When you act authentically, you might displease some, but you attract respect from those who truly matter. More importantly, you begin respecting yourself, the kind of respect no one can steal. Machiavelli didn't write to teach cruelty. He wrote to teach you to stop being naive. The greatest naivety is believing that being nice suffices to earn respect in this world. It doesn't. It's time for brutal honesty. How long will you continue pretending to be the nice person? How long will you sacrifice your energy, voice, and dignity just to maintain an image that isn't even yours but what others expect? Do you think this is virtue, nobility? This is prison, psychological and emotional imprisonment, a cell decorated with false compliments where you're applauded for being harmless, predictable, non-threatening. But here's something perhaps no one has had the courage to tell you: no one will free you from this. No one will arrive to thank you for all your sacrifices, grant you deserved respect, and say you can finally rest. That won't happen. Because as long as you're willing to be used, someone will always be willing to use you. This isn't malice, it's reality. And reality doesn't bend to good intentions. You can continue being that ideal good person society has imposed upon you: calm, patient, understanding, always available, always agreeable. But prepare for a future of frustration, resentment, and invisibility. Or you can awaken. You can decide here and now that your kindness will no longer be a collar around your neck. That you'll act with intention, presence, firmness. That you'll choose when to be generous and to whom. That you'll no longer give what you don't receive. That you'll stop seeking others' approval like a dog begging for affection. The truth is simple: the world respects those who respect themselves. You'll only be free when you stop asking permission to exist. So I ask you, when did you last refuse something without guilt? When did you last put yourself first? When did you last act for yourself without considering others' reactions? The world respects those who establish boundaries, not those who dissolve them. Your transformation begins with recognizing that your worth doesn't depend on others' approval. It depends on your willingness to honor your own truth, even when it's uncomfortable for others to witness. Stop being nice. Start being real. Your authentic self, complete with boundaries, opinions, and the courage to disappoint others, is far more valuable than any false image of perpetual agreeableness you've been maintaining. The choice is yours: continue living as a people-pleasing shadow of yourself, or step into the light of authentic self-respect. Which version of yourself will you choose to be?